Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm going to do another reading on Dean Graziosi, Millionaire Success Habits. Wait, you probably want me to read it while you look at her. I don't blame you. Heck, I would mind reading it and looking at her myself, you know. Dang, gummit. See what happens when I move the camera? All right. Adjustment made. This might go in the outtakes. I don't know. Man. Oh. Yeah, definitely will. What is that? Alright, so pull up some popcorn. And the power of our story. Alright, so the power of our story. And so Dean Graziosi, in the end of the last chapter, he was talking about at the end of the last chapter, he was talking about how this can have a huge impact on the effectiveness of our action and our work. And so, which, you know, I've quite honestly, I've heard about, you know, basically the person's backstory or what leads them into making the massive action that we all do. You know, I've heard about how that impact can fuel us, but you know, at the same time, you know, I was like, how does that not your why? I don't know. And so I've always kind of grouped the whole thing together personally. So anyway, so if we didn't have the struggles that we have had, the challenges and the pushes, we would never develop our character. Our character is coming from those times when we didn't believe we could do it, and we did it anyway, and we fought our way through. In that struggle, we developed our character and our strength. And that's Brendan Bouchard. Oh, man, I keep burping. Anyway, that's Brendan I don't know if I'm going to be able to say this guy's name. Brendan Bouchard, and then he was being interviewed with by Dean Graziosi. So Brendan Bouchard. I recognize the name. I'm probably seen some stuff on him on Facebook or YouTube or whatever, but I don't know who really that is. Each and every one of us has a story, or many stories, that has shaped our lives, and that's very true. At its core, your story is where you live emotionally, mentally, and sometimes even physically. Your story can either be the wind behind your sails or the anchor that is weighing you down. And so, you know, think about it. If you always had a good life with no problems, then why change? I mean, seriously, why make an adaptation? Why manipulate and try and twist your life into a better situation when everything's already good? You know, it doesn't make any sense. You know, but you know, if you have you know, you're living homeless, or you're living you know, in a rough situation, you're living with people that you know, neighbors, friends, or roommates, or family that is not treating you right. Things are not going in a good way. There's abuse in some form, either emotionally, physically, or you know, a mental abuse of some kind. You know, that kind of is like, you know what? I'm not going to sit in this situation forever. I'm going to do whatever I can to get out. And so, you know, it makes a lot of sense. You know, if you have a certain expectation of what results you want for your life, you know, then you're not going to sit still. You're not going to be content or willing to accept that situation long term, you know. And so you start making choices and decisions that will change your situation. And so, you know, and that's really what I guess he's talking about here. Our inner villain tells us these stories that hold us back. If you recall the ways in which that villain sabotages us, you'll understand that he does so by telling us those stories again and again. Stories that we believe are fact, even though they have nothing. They're nothing of the sort. what we need to do is figure out what stories we should be telling ourselves, the ones aligned with the new vision we have for our lives, the ones that enable us to leave the old story, the old way of life in the past, and to habit of aligning your story with your vision takes a little work. But aren't your wealth, your happiness, and your future success worth a little effort now for a better tomorrow? I say so. What do you think? She says yes, even though she's looking at her phone and not paying attention. Of course they are. And so we're engaged. We roll up our sleeves and let's do the work together. In this chapter, we're going to uncover the story or stories that you tell yourself, and how even the seemingly harmless ones may be holding you back and limiting your full potential. And it's about our full potential. That's what we're shooting for. We want to get the best results for the effort that we can give. And a person can only give their best. Well, no, a person doesn't have to give their best. They don't have to. I've worked with plenty of people who are willing to phone it in, do a few hours of work here and there, and then kind of coast the rest of the way. Have I been that? Yeah, I have. That has been me at some points. It's not me now. I'm trying to get the most results for the time I put in, and quite honestly, am I satisfied with my results right now? No, I'm not. And so I would like to fine tune, see what areas I need to still continue to fix. I'm getting better results than I have even like a few weeks ago, but there's still better results to get. And and so the first step is to understand why I tell myself and other people certain stories. Why do I say the stories that I end up saying? Once I gain this understanding, and I'm going to personalize this from here on out, I'll learn how to switch my story from a limiting, disempowering one that's robbing me of my confidence to one that can take me to the moon and beyond. Okay? And so one of my students, Gina, is an amazing lady who eventually became a dear friend. When I met Gina, she had a very specific story she told herself about who she was at that point in her life and who she believed she could be at some point in the future. But telling her story, let me give you some background about who Gina used to be. She was a stay-at-home mom, and an amazing one at that. While her husband worked hard outside the house at his job, Gina ran the household and managed the family with great diligence. Organizing, scheduling, taking care of her husband, Nick, giving piano lessons to make some extra money when she could, and basically being super mom. Not bad. And Gina enjoyed this role immensely. In the back of her mind, she sometimes thought that she had deferred her dreams and goals in order to make sure her family was solid and secure. Well, we all question our choices at times, but for all intents and purposes, Gina was happy with her chosen role. What would eventually make her unhappy, though, was the inner villain who used this lifestyle choice to create a story in Gina's mind that would become debilitating and cause her to question everything. A big shift occurred one by one. Gina's kids started to go off to college and finding their independence. And see what happens there is, you start to become an empty nester, and then if your job is taking care of the kids and the kids are no longer there, and now what? Your job is taking care of the house and there's no kids there to mess up the house. Now what? Okay. Now, one daughter married to a great guy, and Gina was blissfully happy over this event as well as her other children's accomplishments. Simultaneously, however, her inner villain created a much different story in a negative emotional state. Now, when her husband, Nick, came to her and said, we need to make some extra money to handle the escalating costs of college on our daughter's wedding, Gina's old story gained power. This old story went something like this. At 60 years old, I have done what I put on this earth to do and was the best wife and mother I could be. I supported my family at every turn. Now, that job has come to an end. Now I'm old, lonely, with nothing of significance to do anymore. As my friends say, this is the time in life to wind down and to cherish the past and to spend less so that we can make it through until the end. I have no special skills, so hopefully I can make some extra money teaching more piano lessons, or maybe by being a greeter at the local, I'm going to say at Walmart. She says department store, but it's Walmart. This is a youth-based society, and there is no way for an older woman like me to do anything of significance. Well, at least I did a great job as being a mom. Yeah, this story isn't that bad, is it? Personally, I think it's limiting. I think she really puts herself in a box and says, you know what, I can't do anything outside this. And so, because my skills as being a home manager, figuring out what's the best and what's the worst of the family, and she had to prioritize things and had to get things organized, especially on a time-based. I think there's a lot of great skills in that, but a lot of people don't see it. Yeah. Actually, it's worse than bad. It's horrible. It's horrific. This story made her feel depressed. She was basically putting herself out to pasture. Nobody else had to. She was doing it all on her own. And what she had. Oh my God! I'm about to choke on this popcorn. All right, hold on. Okay, so picking up kind of where I left off. Okay, this story isn't bad, is it? Actually, it's worse than bad. It's horrific. This story made her feel depressed. She had no worry that her best days were behind her. Yeah, and that she was putting herself out to pasture before anybody else ever could. Even though it was fiction, she told it to herself so often that it started to become her reality. It became her definition. And so this is something I tell people. You may make a mistake, but don't let it be the definition of you. Some people may say stuff about you, but that's their definition of you. It's not. When it only matters when it becomes your definition of you. And so so people look at me in my past. I'm a recovered drug addict. And people still view me as that, even though I went into the room of recovery 5.5 years ago, almost 6 years ago, really, and I haven't done drugs since. And so they're still calling me this drug addict. They're saying that I need to get recovery, and I've changed the way I think. There's no way that that's something that defines me anymore. It's not my definition, And so all the bad mentality, the evil, mean, and bad and nasty, and I was that way. That doesn't define me anymore. That is not my definition. And so they can still live in the past and view me in that way, and that's their problem. That's their business. But for me, that is not who I define. That's not the way I define myself, and that is not what my actions say. And so. So here we go. We get the emotions that result from these stories that we tell ourselves every day create the life that we are going to live. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I define myself in that way that I used to be, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But it's not my definition anymore. And so I have a new definition, and I continue to redefine that, to redevelop it to something better and better and better. And my goal is to be the best Johnny Ray that I can be. The best husband I can be, the best father I can be, the best entrepreneur that I can be. And so the best Christian I can be. These types of things, this is my goal, and I will achieve it to the best of my ability. And if I need to change a certain thinking pattern, to change a character flaw, to change something along the way to get me to my goal, I'm going to do that. And so, when you start defining yourself in a negative way, in an unfulfilling way, you're going to get that disappointment of life. And so, that's not my definition anymore. And so, it's impossible to boil down what I want to convey into one statement, but if anything comes close, this is it. Your emotions, your thoughts, and your story are your life. And so that's pretty hardcore right there. So your emotions, your EQ, how well do you define yourself? How well is your emotional intelligence? You have to change that to a successful EQ to get successful in life. Your thoughts, well, that's part of your EQ. You have to discipline your way of thinking to get to the success that you want to have. And that, again, that can be marriage, it can be entrepreneurship, it can be faith, it can be, all these different types of things. The better you develop your character, the way you develop your thoughts, that's how you're going to go. And the story, okay. And so I'm just now reading about this really kind of for the first time. So I'm interested to see where this goes. So it is who we are in any moment, and we project those three things into everything we do. In Gina's life, she was projecting, I'm an old lady now, I can't do much, maybe this is the down part of my life and I'll settle in. And that is what life she was living until I helped create a pattern disruption. She started reading one of my books, and slowly but surely she exposed her life as a lie. Now, Zig Ziglar once pointed out that, and really the last, I'm not really sure when this happened, actually, so I can't really say, but I know he's the one that said it in one of his, I was listening to one of his videos or whatever, and so he said that, that there was a military officer who wanted to climb that ladder. He wanted to be a general, but he couldn't get there because all these guys who were over the age of 65 were general in that day and age, and that was considered, really at that time, that they were going into the most successful areas of life as far as discipline, and they had a lot to offer, and people never retired. That just didn't happen. And so he put the idea out there about retirement, and so since then you can kind of see the leader at that time, he decided to, these guys are too old, let's go ahead and retire them and give them basically a pension or whatever, and we'll put younger people in. And that's how this guy got into the role of a general, and it was then at that point the rest of the world just kind of followed suit on that. And so now we have this idea that once we hit the age of 65-ish, we're now of retirement age, and we have to let the rest of the world take care of us, when up until that time that had never happened before. And so it was really just the family's role of to if the mom and dad couldn't do anything, then it was their job to take care of it, and retirement was considered a shaming thing, and so so this idea of being too old and all of that, it just wasn't existent, in years past. And so when Gina learned that about her internal villain and how he shaped her story and she heard in her head, she was motivated to defeat that villain. She treated this villain as an actual foe rather than as a symbol for her stagnation. The more she learned about the villain and how he functions, the more motivated she was to stop his harmful storytelling. Gina recognized that if she changed her story, she could change her present and her future. Rock on. And that's exactly what she did. Gina began telling herself a brand new story, one that totally transformed her life and her family and her future in front of her. I am a young, strong 63-year-old who has discovered the next phase in my life. I'm vibrant, beautiful. There's nothing anyone at any age can do that I can't do. Age doesn't limit us. It empowers us to use the wisdom we have gathered to be and act smarter and faster. Nothing can stop me from the joy, happiness, wealth, and abundance that I desire. That's some great affirmations. Check that out. God gave me so many amazing gifts, and I intend to use them all. Wow. That's a little different from the woman thinking her best days were behind her, and it was time to curl up and get old and fade away. Gina's new story launched her on a new path, and here is what she has accomplished in the 5 years since she changed her story and her habits, started her own business. She's making more than enough for her life, and her husband doesn't need to work anymore. She retired her husband. And by retired, I mean he doesn't have to work a 9 to 5 for somebody else, making that somebody else millions of dollars. You know? So I guess you could say that she redefined his roles, his career roles, you know? And so he now, instead of working money for somebody else, making them a whole lot of money, he's now working alongside her, and they're using a joint venture on creating more abundance for her household. Yeah. Has traveled to over 25 cities in America and multiple other countries. Spoke to a variety of audiences about her transformation, co-authored a book about her experiences, bought a dream home overlooking the bay in Seattle, paid for all her kids' college educations, used company profits to pay for incredible family vacations, lost weight, got in the best shape of her life, convinced her son to quit his energy-draining job in corporate America and work in her new business, loves to drink great wine, eat wonderful food, and cherish her relationship with God on a new level, crossed off almost everything on her bucket list, smiles more than any other person I know, inspired her children as they watch her go from what she wanted and achieved it. Go after what she wanted and achieved it. Gina noted that this may have been her greatest accomplishment. Okay, think about this for just a moment. Gina's new reality didn't emerge because of some change in the outside world. She didn't hit the lotto or inherit money. She didn't get lucky and run into someone at a party who gave her a great job. What changed were her habits and eventually her story. She became the thermostat of her life rather than the thermometer. If you're not motivated to change your story by how Gina changed hers, then you're really dug deep into your old story. Yeah, probably. I mean, me personally, I'm way ahead of this anyway. No, Gina wasn't broke or living in depression or despair when she finally realized her story was holding her back. She just was wanting she was just living a life that was status quo, just average. Okay? And she was being held back by her she was being held back from her full next level potential. When she discovered that she didn't need anything from the outside world to achieve more, she started rewriting her story. Wow, that's pretty cool. It was only then that she achieved her dream of unshakable peace and inner happiness. And the money was great, but it was only the icing on the cake. Now, you may be thinking, well, maybe this worked for Gina, but what if I'm not as smart or as strong as Gina is? Well, if Gina were the only one who had ever experienced such a dramatic change, then maybe you should still have. Now, if Gina was the only one who experienced such a dramatic change, then yeah, that's definitely a basis for doubt. But Gina isn't the exception, but the rule, at least in my experience. I work with all types of students, a wide range of IQs, backgrounds, personalities, abilities. We all have been able to do what Gina did. It actually doesn't matter where you are in your life right now. It doesn't matter if you already have a great job and family, or if you have wealth with no fulfillment, or if you have fulfillment with no wealth. Regardless, there is a story you must stop telling yourself, a story you must adjust because it is preventing you from leading an optimal life in the areas that matter to you most. Change your story, change your life. Amen. I'm excited about this. I'm sure there's going to be a thing that'll take me to his website, and I'm going to pause. I'm going to download that when we get there, and I'm going to do that exercise quite diligently. And so, because I want to identify what this is that's, maybe, kind of like that rope behind my back that I can't even see, that's pulling me back from really achieving that fullness that I need or want. Gotta have whatever. Anyway, I could stop at this point, leaving you inspired by Gina to change your story, but it might inspire you for a day or two, and then your old story would drift back into place. You need to anchor this awareness and this change so it sticks with you for life. Together, we'll make this happen. I'm going to give you the tools to make that shift, to change that story you've been living with, to change your mental state, to develop millionaire success habits, and to build that confidence to go to another level in your finances in all areas of your life. Now it's time to uncover any stories that could be holding you back. All right. Well, now we're actually at a pause moment. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here, and we'll actually go over there and see if they have a resources thing on this. All right.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god! It's showtime.
All right. To flesh out stories and flush out the self-limiting beliefs in your life, we must move some of them to the forefront of the mind. To do this, think about in which area of your life do I want to experience the biggest breakthrough. Since I'm reading this book, the odds are that more money, starting to expand, or my own business, or finding work I love represent breakthrough areas for me. So stop for a moment and I need to stop for a moment and ask myself why these things I desire have not happened yet. Well, quite honestly, some of them are, but I'm still not, like I said before, I'm not quite getting the results. Make sure I don't filter my responses, don't make excuses, offer rationalizations, or go into denial. Okay, so we'll just, detract what I just said. All right, be honest and write the reasons I haven't achieved the breakthroughs I desire. To facilitate this exercise, think about which of the following factors might be stopping me from breaking through the economy. Lack of time, my boss, my employees, my unsupportive spouse, my education, my lack of capital, my health, my relationships. I would say capital, my lack of capital, my lack of funds, lack of understanding. Sometimes I just don't understand. I believe I haven't been as teachable as I should be. I've been full of excuses rather than actions. I've been trying to cut corners that I shouldn't have been trying to cut. Education, no. Unsupportive spouse, my spouse is awesome. And employees, I don't have any. So my boss, at this point, I don't have one. Lack of time, I've got nothing but. The economy has nothing to do with what, well, I'm in tax season, I guess, at this point, has probably been a bit, maybe, I don't know. I don't feel really, the cutting corners thing has been an Achilles heel, lack of patience. Many other possibilities exist. I list these just to get my mind started, thinking about what stands in the way of my dreams. Okay, now focus on what comes to mind immediately when I think of why I haven't reached the point in my life I desire. What is the story I have been in my head? Again, cutting corners, not following things in the order that they should be done. And again, money. In most cases, when you want growth in any of these areas but can't seem to find it, it means there is a story standing between me and that next level. Kind of like a wall that I can't break down. But once you realize it is only once you realize it is actually there. Now think about the stories that popped into my head. Can you see how the factors from the previous chapter, and this is where it says to go to the resources tab. So if you've read, it's at thebetterlife.com resources tab, and you can pull that sheet off and see the internal villain, the lack of a deeper why. Fuel these limiting stories and make them real as heck in your subconscious. Consider too how my story became a part of me. Maybe the negative news reports you received supported your negative story. Well, quite honestly, people are saying, okay, you need to go and get this thing to do this. I would look at the cost and go, gosh, I don't have that. If I'm going to pay my bills, then what? You know, I won't have enough for food and all this. And so it was really fear. Okay. So yeah, okay. Consider too how the story became a part of you. Maybe the negative news, maybe hearing you need to work on your weaknesses. No, it's just fear. So maybe friends, bad advice. No, it was fear. Did stories come to mind? If they did, write them down. If not, stop reading for a moment and think about what you're holding back. Perhaps you're resisting this exercise, telling yourself, well, I don't have a good story. This is reality. If that's what you think, good. Write down what you consider to be your reality. Remember, Gina's before story, or used to be the previous bulleted list, that sparked mine. Now, let's dig a little deeper and define the limiting beliefs that crafted this deeply embedded story. Just so you know, these stories may have been with you for many years. They may stretch back to early childhood. The crazy part is that in most cases, the stories that disempower us have been instilled in us by the people we've encountered along life's journey. These stories create the excuses our subconscious gives us for not living up to your full potential. By the end of this chapter, I want you to be able to dig out from under your limiting beliefs and stories and throw them away for good. Boom, they're gone. So let me share a scenario here that hopefully can help me dig deeper and achieve this objective. If your grandparents went through the Great Depression, yeah, mine did. Okay, most likely have extremely conservative beliefs about saving money. They did. Yeah, my grandfather, you would be able to find like money hidden in all kinds of spots. They may say and believe things like you have to play it safe, you have to get a job regardless if you like it or if it aligns with the person you are. And see, my parents kind of pounded that in too, simply because they had parents who went through the Great Depression, and that's what they were taught. Taking a risk can be devastating. And here's the things. People went through hell during the Great Depression. Many in that generation couldn't even put food on the table for their families. At that period in history, there wasn't much margin for error. The focus was on survival. A huge part of the population took any job they could find. If they hadn't saved every penny they could have, lost everything. If that was the experience of your grandparents, they probably raised your parents with a frugal, cautious mindset. They may have instilled their depression area beliefs in your parents and have trickled down to you. Yeah, that's what I just said. Those beliefs may be holding you back, and you didn't even realize it. Maybe you want to branch out on your own. You want to expand your business and take on a new job, but fear has you locked in place. So see, I was talking about fear. I was just talking about fear. But fear has locked you in place, and you don't even know why. In this case, I know why. It's a generational limiting belief or story that was handed down to you from your parents and their parents before them. You know, and I'm going to pause this for a second. You know, there was this story of this one woman. She's at home, and it's getting close to Thanksgiving, and they decide they're going to have a ham. They're going to have a ham for Thanksgiving, and so the woman cuts off the ends of the ham, puts it in the pan, and the daughter is there, and she goes, "Well, Mom, why are you cutting off the ends of the ham?" And she goes, "Well, we just always done that." And she goes, "Well, why?" And she goes, "Well," and she pauses and she thinks about it. She goes, "You know, I don't know. I don't know why we always do that, but we have always done it." And she goes, "Well, let me ask Mom." And she goes into the living room and asks her mom. And she goes, "Mom, why do we always cut the ends off the ham before we cook it?" And she goes, "Well, you know, that's a good question." And so she goes into the bedroom. Her mom is actually there, and she's in the bed, taking a nap before the Thanksgiving dinner. She's tired, she's old, and she goes, "Hey, Mom, just a minute." And she's like, she kind of stirs a minute and wakes up, and she goes, "Hey, Mom, you know, my daughter is in there in the kitchen, and she's making the Thanksgiving ham, why do we always cut the ends off a ham before we cook it? And she goes, gosh, I don't know. That's just something that, my mom always did. Yeah, let's call her up. She's in the nursing home, and so she gets her on the phone. They get her all on speaker, and so, 5 generations right there, or 4 on the phone, and they're talking to the 5th generation on the phone, and they call her up, and she goes, "Hey, Mom," and then they're all there. "Hey, we're getting ready for Thanksgiving. We're going to come and grab you here in just a little bit, but I was curious. We're making the Thanksgiving ham. We were curious why do we always cut the ends off the ham?" She goes, "Oh, dear, let me tell you. Well, you see, the ham was always too big, and so if we're going to put it in the pan and put it in our tiny oven, we had to cut the ends off for it to fit and to cook properly." And so that's the only reason why. And so, and they go, "Oh, okay." So they never had to cut the ends off. It was always a thing about, it had to work for the time that they were doing it. And so, and then this is kind of the same thing. We had to, these people in the Great Depression had to live a life of a certain thing, but it doesn't work for today. We have much more opportunities for us today. And so, we always just seem to do the same thing, no matter what the situation may be. So these transitional ideology, I guess, of what we had to do back in the 1920s and the 1930s don't necessarily apply to 2018. And so he goes, "You are living the ideas of someone from the Great Depression, even though I'm not living in that period. It is simply an invisible fight, or as I've called it, the villain within that is causing me to be stagnant, or causing you as you're watching this." These beliefs can limit all areas of your life, from the religion that I follow, the political party I gravitate towards, to the type of person I choose in a relationship. My limiting beliefs are sneaky and guide so much of what I do and who I become. Wouldn't you call it crazy if someone suggested that someone else was controlling your mind? Well, in many ways, this is exactly what is happening in my life. So focus on the beliefs and stories that are limiting me in different ways. When I consider doing something new or challenging, like starting a business or trying to make more money or get in decent physical shape, what do I say out loud, or what do I say out loud or to myself? Write down the beliefs or stories that come to mind and what I want to improve. Don't worry if they repeat what I wrote earlier in the chapter. They should be similar. This is all about extracting the beliefs that currently guide my life, right? And next, write these beliefs where they came from. If I'm like many people, I'll examine my stories and beliefs and say, wow, that's my dad's belief, that's my college professor's belief, that's my ex-spouse's belief. Even though they may have come from these people, if they live inside of me for long enough, they'll become my reality as well. So we need to identify them and see how artificial they are. In most cases, I must see that they are not my beliefs, but rather beliefs handed down to me by others. So now that I have identified them, I want to guide. So now that you have identified them, I want you to guide. All right, let's try this one more time. So now that you have identified them, I want to guide you on a path to not only prove your story isn't true, but also show you how to reverse it and make a new, limitless, empowering story that powers you toward all different types of life success. All right? I'm positive. Okay, so the next part, how has it affected your life? When the wife's in there cooking, I'm like, I don't know what she's making, but boy, does it smell good. So I'm excited. I'm vegetarian, at the least. So in this case, it may be 100% pure vegan. And so, being that it's cooking, it's not raw vegan, but you know what? Rock on anyway, right? So it's possible that you don't realize just how negative the impact of your story has been. Take a moment and assess its impact by answering the following questions. Has it diminished or possibly destroyed your confidence and lowered your self-esteem? In my case, yes. Has it made you angry or vengeful? Yes. Okay. Has it left you living with doubt, confusion, and maybe even going to therapy? Yes. Okay. Has it cost you your health, your career, your peace of mind, a relationship, or your joy? My health, yes. My career, it's definitely hurt it a good deal in the past. And so peace of mind, yes. A relationship, yes. Your joy, for a while it has. And so has it stopped you from finding the real relationship you deserve or from fixing the relationship in your life? Yes. Has it prevented... Okay. Has it prevented you from being the parent you want to be? It's compromised in some ways. So then I guess the answer is yes. Has it made you fearful of trying to start your own business or create more wealth with your ideas? Yes. Chances that you've answered yes to one or more of these questions? Well, yes. Actually, all of them, when I stop and evaluate. If so, assess and write the cost. What specifically have you been denied? What loss have you suffered? What problems have developed because of the story you tell yourself? Now, these when I said yes to these things, I mean it hasn't been necessarily yes now, but because I have taken a leap of faith and I have gone after recovery. Now, as I look at my answers and evaluate things, there's still hints of yes, and I would say to all of these things in a sense. And so just being real, I've done a lot of work over the last few years, especially on the EQ stuff. That one going back 5 years, I guess I would say at this point. And and really starting that journey and kind of going after doing a lot of action steps. I can say that there's been a lot of growth. And all right, so anyway, what problems develop because of the story I tell myself? And don't worry about writing complete sentences, just get it all down on paper so you have something tangible to look at. I want you to come, he wants me to come face to face with the pain or the missed opportunities a bad story or negative belief has brought, and therefore build an even more even more resentment towards it, and more urgency to change it. But before even doing that, let's take an even deeper look. Look at the future, and what about these stories will continue to think about what these stories will continue to cost me if I do not change them. Well, I mean, quite honestly, I'm not willing to continue to live that way anymore. I look at what if I don't. I mean, quite honestly, there's no acceptable answer to continue living that way. My journey, if I don't, that takes me back to my why. I have to be dependable, because if I don't, the cost is so much. It's just so much. I cannot handle the idea of failing. The fear of failure is the fear of not being dependable, to not be relied on, and failing, continuing to fail. The fear has to be. I don't know if I can put that into words. I mean, there's so much writing on this. That failure just is I have to be successful, you know. Yeah. This is all right. Well, let me power through this. Look at the future and think about what these stories will continue to cost me if I do not change them. On my journey to where I want to go in life, how might these stories get in the way? Think about my life in 5 years, 10 years, or maybe even 20 years. What did I miss out on? I'm gonna shoot.
Meow 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 meow.
Okay, sorry for the dog barking intermission. That's gonna happen until I get like an office that's enclosed and more soundproof and by soundproof, sound resistant, because nothing is soundproof, right? Anyway, so look to the future and think about what these stories will continue to cost you if you don't change them. On your journey where you want to go in life, how might these stories get in the way? Think about your life in 5 years, 10 years, or maybe even 20 years. What did you miss out again because of these stories and beliefs? Close your eyes and imagine missing out on a great opportunity at some point in the future. Let yourself experience the pain of missing an opportunity. Are you really going to live these stories are you going to going to give these stories so much power? Recognize what they have cost you and what they will continue to cost you. When you think back and imagine on what life would have been like if I hadn't changed these stories, and I told myself, I know that all the success, love, and abundance I have had would not have happened. I would not have started my own career, touched the lives of millions of people, traveled the world, and so much more. Even scarier, I may not have ended up the father I am today to Brianna and Brody. Clinging to one bad story or one bad belief may have had a ripple effect in so many areas of my life. So let's get to flipping it to an empowering, limitless story. Amen. All right, so to get rid of your old story for good, find proof that it is a load of garbage. Okay. A part of my old story was that since I was in special reading and never got good grades, I wasn't smart enough to go to college. And if I didn't have a college degree, I would never amount to anything. I told myself that I could never start my own business and that you need money and smarts to make money. Okay, let's continue. I surely don't miss those crappy stories I used to tell myself, but I know what it's like to have them. Let me ask you this. Was the story I told myself true, or was it just plain garbage? Do you know any millionaires or financially successful people who didn't go to college? Of course you do. I know, yeah, I do. Two good friends who I've spent lots of time with are Tony Robbins and the billionaire Richard Branson. Neither of them started with money or went to college. I don't think Richard made it past second grade. Wow, really? And here are a few other massively successful people who lack college degrees. Maybe you've heard of a few of them. Bill Gates, Michael Dell, Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Carnegie, Andrew Jackson, Benjamin Franklin, Coco Chanel, Henry Ford, James Cameron, John D. Rockefeller Sr., Walt Disney. Anyway, and the list goes on and on. I researched the topic many years ago and found out that the story I was telling myself was total nonsense, and I proved to myself that the story was wrong and a lie, and it is. Even today, I know people who are making great money today that started here in the last few years. That are making great money. They're not millionaires or billionaires, but they've come from nothing to a substantial something, with very little, all right? And so I know that you don't have to have much, if anything, to make it, okay? Maybe you can tell me by my writing style that I don't always express myself with the best grammar, and I and I haven't read as many as the great books as I should have. When I was younger, I convinced myself that I had no chance of doing anything in life that required reading or writing skills. I couldn't conceive of the thought of writing a book, let alone multiple New York Times bestsellers. Am I an exception to the rule, or are there other people who have written New York Times bestsellers who aren't as good as grammar? Or maybe I might be the first successful person who can't read quite well. Anyway, am I an exception to the rule, or are there other people who have written New York Times bestsellers who aren't good at grammar or reading? Of course there are. So clearly my old story was completely false. With a little research, I was able to figure out that the story didn't hold water. So have other people with no money and horrible childhoods gone on to do great things, to be great dads, enjoy rewarding relationships, have amazing friends, and be massively successful financially? Yes. The chances are that the old story you've been dragging around is wrong, and you just need to prove that it is a bunch of crap. Okay? It's total nonsense to think that you are the only one with certain issues holding you back. And to get the proof that those limiting stories and beliefs are nothing more than pure fiction. Alright, well, it smells like dinner's just about ready. I'm going to stop it here, and I think I'm just going to compile this and post it as part 1 of chapter 4. Alright, peace out. And you know what, I think maybe before I actually compile it and post it, I'm going to kind of have like a little musical type of thing and just show some proof of people who were successful, who've made great money after this. So peace out, be good.